In Honkai Star Rail, LightCones are incredibly important, and as such, a lot of individuals may be in the position right now to where they're looking to advance their account. Maybe looking at something like a current banner, and you're wondering, hey, is this LightCone worth it? Is Lotra's LightCone worth it? Etc. And you really want to push your account further, and instead of something for Eidolons, you want something that's a bit more flexible, and that's what LightCones aim to offer you. And so you're wondering if any of these limited LightCones are worthwhile, or if picking up one from maybe a character that you already have who's on the standard banner, such as Yanqing or Bailu, are worthwhile investments for you to make, especially given that you can either get those LightCones or 30 pearls. This video will aim to help you evaluate which LightCones are worthwhile for you to pick up either in the future or from the shop now if maybe you're a bit iffy. And these won't be me looking at characters like Zila and saying, oh yeah, pick this one up for her. Instead, I want to give you general advice that you can take going forward, because I believe it's much more important for you to understand why LightCones are good as opposed to understanding which ones are good. Off the rip, there are 3 primary stat types you want to focus on. Crit rates, such as in Zila's LightCone, and crit damage are the best ones to go for. This is because not only do they help balance out your overall crit ratio, but subsequently they're also the most difficult ones to get. Yes, I understand you can get them from maybe a relic set like a 2-piece, or a main stat, yes, but realistically speaking, they're not very often to roll into, and it takes a lot of effort to get them. So if it helps you balance it out, it's much more powerful, especially early on, and towards the late game, you want to flex around your characters to get attack, maybe some energy regen, and other things. But crit rate and crit damage are your top priority. If Cone or anything gives you either one of these stats, they're automatically a really good bonus to have. Next up is going to be a flat damage percent bonus. In this instance, it is 12% increased damage on Silverwolf's LightCone. This makes it a much better LightCone because in this instance, yes, it affects her damage, but it also affects everyone else's damage. So her entire team is dealing 12% more damage. Adding on to this, another thing you really want to consider is specific damage type bonuses. In this instance, it is ultimate damage. So for somebody who deals a lot of damage with their ultimate, maybe it's Serval, maybe it is Jing Yuan. This is exceptional. This is why Jing Yuan's LightCone was good, because if a character is dealing one type of damage, or is primarily focused on one type of damage, anything that benefits that is really good for them. In this instance, Zila's LightCone gives crit damage to her ultimate, but also increases basic and skill attack damage. So overall, this is benefiting her entire kit, except it requires her to have speed. And while you do have things like something irreplaceable that are really beneficial for certain units and certain types, attack percentage can be oversaturated by Ting Yun, by Space Link Station, by Fleet of the Ageless, by so many different varieties, even in Simulated Universe, that it kind of becomes a dead stat later on because you may have so many buffers or so many relic sets that are benefiting your team. This doesn't mean it's bad, this just means it's not the top priority. Instead, I would focus on damage percent types, or of any damage, ultimate, follow-up, basic skill, and crit rate and crit damage as a top priority. A fine example of what makes a LightCone good versus what makes one average is Before Dawn compared to None of the Milky Way. Before Dawn gives crit damage, making it a top priority stat, but for Jing Yuan and any erudition character, the skill and ultimate damage is exceptionally powerful on pretty much anybody. The main reason this is so good on Jing Yuan in particular is because of a 48% follow-up attack damage bonus. Considering the vast majority of Jing Yuan's damage comes from his follow-up attacks, 48% is a massive buff to him, especially since erudition characters rely primarily on follow-up attack damage. Contrary to that, you have None of the Milky Way, which gives attack, which is already the 3rd or 4th, depending on how you're setting them up, valued stats compared to the other ones. And this is dependent on enemies on the field. If less enemies are on the field, you're getting less bonus damage. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a damage bonus increase of 30%. This is overall, this is universally applicable to any stat realm. Ultimate, follow-up attack, basic attack, skill damage. This is good. It does depend, or at least half of it does depend on you having multiple enemies on field, making it much less valuable than Before Dawn. Another thing to consider is the prerequisites required. Yanqing's LightCone gives you 30 crit damage. Great, especially for him since he gives himself so much crit rates. But what's next? For Hun characters, and this is a very difficult thing to understand for a lot of players, because you're using a skill and most character skills attack multiple times, as in something like Zila hits once, then twice, then 3 times, and the Yanqing actually hits 4 times, the secondary bonus here is incredibly dependent on if or when you don't crit. The 30% crit damage bonus is nice flat, but the crit rate increase by 36% is really beneficial if your character has low enough crit rate. The problem is you just need to account for that. Yanqing's skill hits 4 times. If that first hit does not crit, the other 3 get the 36% crit rate bonus, alongside the 30% crit damage bonus. That's good. This applies to Zila, this applies to anybody else. The problem is, it relies on you not critting, and the vast majority of you will be wanting to build crit out. Not saying it's a bad LightCone, just saying you want to understand the prerequisites and how they may affect the characters you intend on using them on. Bronya's LightCone. It is regarded as one of the most powerful LightCones you have access to. And I don't want to disprove that, but I do want to discuss why. Energy regeneration rate is an iffy stat to have. You want it, you need it, don't get me wrong. More bursts aren't always better bursts, but it is beneficial to have. Increasing it by 10% is already making it wonderful off the rip. Regenerating 1 skill point when the character uses the ultimate is great for Bronya, it's great for Tingyun, it's great for anybody who wants to ult, even Asta. However, the problem is, since it only can be triggered once after 2 uses of a character's ultimate, you're not going to be proccing that very often on a lot of characters. Don't get me wrong, Tingyun, you may want to do that a lot. Bronya is really what it's made for, and you can especially see this with that secondary passive. When the character uses their skill, the next ally taking action deals 30% more damage. This sounds really good. The problem is, to get the maximum value out of this, you would want your Tingyun to go first, followed by your Seele or your Yanqing or whoever is dealing the damage on the team. Bronya is the only one who can directly affect this to get it to work the way you want it to. Otherwise, if it's your Bailu dealing 30% more damage, you're not dealing much damage. 30% of 0 is still 0. This LightCone is good, but it's entirely made based around one character, and subsequently the flexibility of this LightCone drops significantly. And even with Welk LightCone, and I don't want to just focus on these, but I do want to understand and want a lot of people to understand that value and flexibility is incredibly important for any of these. Yes, you can have something like Jing Yuan's that's really powerful and really good, but if you're going to somebody like Seele, if your character can't reach the speed requirements, this value drops significantly. Crit rate, crit damage, damage percent, follow-up, ult attack, whatever that percentage damage is, and then attack percentage are all great stats to have, but the primary issue is going to be how flexible is it and how easy is the bonus to achieve. In this instance, it relies on you not critting. It's not that easy to achieve because a lot of you want to crit to begin with. In this instance, you need a bunch of speed. 60 additional speed over 100. A lot of characters won't be achieving this naturally. For this instance, yes, effect hit rate is nice, but you need multiple debuffs, 3 or more in particular. And if your character can't apply 3 or more, then this bonus is kind of dead. And so the flexibility and value of LightCones isn't necessarily dictated by what they offer in terms of stats. Yes, crit damage is great. Yes, damage percent is great, and so is follow-up attack damage. That's what makes this one so good. But instead, it is dictated by what are the main stats that are accessible to you. If you can take Seele's LightCone and slide it onto any Hun character, it is an amazing LightCone. But if you have to take something like Silverwolf's LightCone and meet so many different prerequisites to get the actual value from it, it isn't worthwhile because it's not accessible. Accessibility is the value for you, and it's what you want. So if you're looking at Starlight Exchange, the best value LightCones for you will entirely depend on the characters you have. If you have Bronya, but the battle isn't over, it's going to be exceptional for you. If you have Yanqing or Seele and somebody who uses multiple attacks at once in their skill, yes, Sleep Like the Dead is going to be great. If you have Bailu or Natasha, this is going to be nice because the max HP and outgoing healing bonus is benefiting both of their abilities. However, the additional damage allows them to help out their team more so than others. I don't recommend this because yes, Japard can freeze, and yes, he's a defensive character. The problem is a lot of you will be focusing so heavily on your DPS characters that this isn't really going to be what you're picking up anyway. Something irreplaceable sounds good, and the healing is nice, but attack percentage, as I mentioned before, is oversaturated. In the Name of the World is great for debuffed enemy damage, but if your character is Nihility and they aren't dealing damage in the first place, at least without Eidolons, it isn't worthwhile to pick this up in my opinion. Silverwolf is great, and the free-to-play LightCone you got from the recent event is honestly really good. And on the Milky Way, I mentioned this before, the damage bonus is great, but the weakness break is a big issue and a big drawback, and so is the attack percentage requiring 5 enemies. My recommendation to you is if you're looking at future banners, solely focus on what you can access. And if the thing you can access is going to be really good crit rate and crit damage ratios, or an outright damage percent bonus, it is worthwhile to pull for. But if it requires specific enemies or specific enemy defeats to be enabled, or for weakness breaks to happen, it isn't a good LightCone because it's not accessible for the vast majority of characters on your roster. But tell me what you think down below. Maybe you have a different opinion. Either way, if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing, leave a like, and I'll see you next time.